Also, President Trump's ongoing effort to shame Harley-Davidson as the company prepares to shift some production overseas in response to the president's tariff fight. The president fired off a multitude of tweets, including, quote, Harley must know that they won't be able to sell back into U.S. without paying a big tax. So, Joe, that story is also percolating this morning before we get to the travel ban. The president just, I don't know where he's going with this Harley thing.
Well, it's nowhere good. You know, Mike Barnicle, I know that you have grown up knowing a few Harley hogs. I certainly have. Donald Trump may be able to shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still not lose support. But when he tweets that he is going to destroy Harley-Davidson by taxing them to death, he's going to destroy Harley-Davidson. I talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. This sort of reminds me of that great song from 1979 in America by Charlie Daniels Band when they say, oh, you think we're weak? Just go put your hands on a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And then, sir, I believe you'll understand. The same applies for Harley-Davidson and Harley owners. You don't say you're going to purposely try to kill their company.
Well, Joe, first of all, let's get that tweet back up on the screen if we could. Alex, if you could get that prior tweet about Harley-Davidson and the president's threat, where he says, you know, you're not going to come back. We're going to tax you. You're going to pay a big tax. What does that mean to other American companies with operations overseas and with the confusion of the tax code, with the threat of a recession on the horizon? Clearly, we can talk about that at some point later. What does that mean? Is this president so emboldened, so free of any restraints in his own mind as well as his own behavior? Does he think that he can do whatever it is he wants to do, to go after individual corporations? And now with the Supreme Court decision, he has successfully, probably in his own mind, gone after a specific religion in this world, the Muslim faith. And what is going on here? We know it's an era of broken norms, but this is right. Really nearly now approaching beyond belief.
And where are the representatives? Where is Paul Ryan today?
Question.
He should be aggressive today. Paul Ryan, who represents Janesville, Wisconsin, part of Wisconsin. Where is Paul Ryan speaking out on this? Where are Republicans in the state of Missouri not only attacking Donald Trump's statement, but actually, Mika, just explaining how un-American it is for a president to try to act like a king and say, I, myself alone, I am going to destroy this American institution because it's crossing me. It's not doing what I wanted to do. It is so un-American. And I saw conservatives on Twitter yesterday stating the obvious, saying the right thing, talking about how un-American it is to use Trump's centralized state to say, I'm going to destroy a company. Look what he has done to Amazon. Yeah. He's lied. He's pressured improperly the post office to try to do anything he can to destroy Amazon because he doesn't like the Washington Post. No, this is a president clearly out of control. This is a president who is shattering constitutional norms. This is a president who does not deserve the support of conservatives, whether he has it or not, because he's not a conservative.
Well, there's a little something for everyone in what this president is doing at this point if you love this country and you're concerned about where it's going. So we'll turn now to the Supreme Court. And
thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.